Hello and welcome to episode 9 of our Women in Business series. I'm Becca Peppiatt, Marketing Manager at Proctor Stevenson, and today we're going to be sitting down with our very own Business Development Manager, Sophie Harris from Proctor's, and we're going to be hearing a little bit more about her career journey and her advice for other women in business. Sophie, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So obviously we work together very closely on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So for those of the people that are watching today that might not know what it is that you do, can you explain to us a little bit more about your role as Business Development Manager?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the bottom line is it's my job to win new clients. How we do that is probably the bit that people are most interested in. So obviously, unfortunately, they don't just knock on the door and say they've got a budget of 1 million and can we build a new website or something. Make my life a bit easier if they did. So essentially it's through a multitude of ways. Obviously, events has been a big issue over the last 2 years. So we've had to really restructure how we do our business development. And thankfully, we have an amazing team here that's meant that we can pivot our approach and go towards a more digitally focused outreach strategy. So obviously, we're using a lot of platforms to do exactly that. And the bottom line is we're just starting conversations is the main thing. So we don't do a lot of the old school Mad Men-esque tactics anymore. So there's no annoying cold calls or anything like that. There's a reason it's called business development and not sales. It's all about building relationships and getting to know people and then slowly building up a trust so that eventually then they invest in us the money and the time and energy that are required to do the more large scale projects. So I guess that's my role in a nutshell, but there's probably more I can add to that, but yeah.
Okay, and what drew you to business development as a career path?
To be honest, I kind of fell into it, if anything. So, when I was in school, and I don't think this is a gender thing, I think this is more of a generational thing. So when I was in school, the career choices that we had were very much follow the well-trodden path. So they were very sort of boxed in. So it was kind of like traditional roles, sort of policeman or lawyer, no offense to the lawyers out there, teacher or something along those lines. It was the things that your parents did or you knew someone who was in the industry. Business development and digital was a completely alien thing to me, and I had no real aspirations to go into that as a career path. I actually started and trained as a teacher. I did an English literature undergrad, but it got to the point where I graduated and I needed a summer job. So I decided to take on a role as a junior copywriter within a digital agency. I had my PGC spot. I was due to start officially training in September, and I taught a little bit before then. So in my mind, everything was geared up towards starting as an English teacher. However, as soon as I got into work within a digital agency, it kind of opened up something like a world to me that I hadn't been aware of before. Although my role was obviously a bit limited because I was just a junior copywriter, what I got to see was the business development manager at that agency kind of getting in front of people, talking to people. There just seemed to be so much buzz and excitement about that role, and particularly about digital and what it can do, both from whether that's content, brand development, website development. It just seemed like a really exciting world to me. So I put my teacher aspirations on pause, but I think I knew deep down that I wasn't going to be returning to that career path, at least not for a good while anyway. And I kind of took a leap of faith really from there, and I went into a bigger agency based in Bristol, but not this one, and started down the path of marketing and business development. And it just kind of escalated from there really. And the one thing that I love about business development is that we get to talk to people, new people all the time, get to know as many people as possible, but also work as part of a team that is generally very passionate about what they do. And once I kind of started to get ingrained in that, I knew that I didn't want to leave it behind, and I kind of grew from there more than anything. So I guess I didn't set out on the business development path, but I'm certainly well into it now.
And what would you say drives you to succeed in a professional environment? What motivates you?
I think more than anything, it's the effect that a new client has on the agency. So, when everyone thinks that business development is a very isolated role, that you kind of go out and you win clients and you bring them back and everything like that, and you get all the glory. But it's absolutely not the case at all. Everything that we do here at Proctor Stevenson, although I'm the business development manager, there's certainly a team around me that makes sure that we get the client, we get it across the finish line. And when we do that, then the effect that it has on the agency from a morale perspective, from excitement, everything is so positive that it really motivates you to not just, win clients, but also develop those relationships and then grow the client once they're in the agency as well. And also then the opportunity to just work on really exciting projects. Obviously, we're a B2B agency, we're specialists in that area, which means we get to see incredible organizations across the world on basically a daily basis, which is fantastic. So it's really that drives me, both the morale part of things, but also just the love of talking to people. I'm from Wales, this is my bread and butter. We talk until we're physically stopped, so it doesn't take much to get a conversation started with me. So yeah, that would be my main motivation, I guess.
Now at Proctor's, we've been very lucky that we've had a very strong last couple of years of new business, which is hugely down to, a testament to how strong Sophie has been working and how highly skilled the team is here. What would you say, Sophie, in your opinion, are some of the most effective initiatives that you've put in place that have helped to promote Proctor's over the last couple of years?
I think integrating business development and marketing a lot more. Obviously, we work together on like an hour-by-hour basis, which is fantastic. And because of that collaborative approach, it means that Proctor Stevenson has a bigger effect on the environment around us, so more people are aware of our presence. And obviously then, when I speak to them, it's very, very rare that the only point of contact that they've had with Proctor Stevenson is that conversation with me. Usually they've seen some LinkedIn content, they've seen our website, they've seen, they've interacted with us in some way, shape or form. And I think that us working together has been an incredibly positive thing for the agency. I think alongside that as well is switching up how business development works within the agency. So it's no longer an isolated part of the company. We're working on a day-to-day basis with technology, with client services, with digital design, with creative. All of these skill sets are being brought in during the initial conversations, which means that people are getting, although I'm there to give an introduction to Proctor Stevenson, they're also getting to see a wider variety of options that they have in front of them. And when we're talking to them, maybe it's just a website that they're looking for. They're looking for some help with their website, whether that's with technology or our Webflow work or something like that. However, when I'm sat there with representatives of so many different parts of the company, they can see that we're a full service agency and we have so much more that we can bring to the project. And their eyes kind of light up, to be honest, and they're kind of like, well, you know what, we've got this problem as well. What would you do in that regard? And we've got an additional, thread that we can look into there. So I think that's a big part of it as well. And then finally, it's just about moving away from the more traditional sales tactics. So cold calling, I think, has had its day. I think everybody knows what that is. And I don't know many people who even pick up the phone these days when somebody calls them, to be honest. So we absolutely don't do that. And lockdown, although it's been incredibly difficult, it has been very beneficial in the way that we've been forced to pivot our approach, much more digitally focused, using digital campaigns to drive lead generation and marketing, syncing those up perfectly has been a really great way of getting conversations started and then developing them from there. So I think those are the main things that I brought to the table, hopefully.
Thinking about you as an individual and your sort of journey throughout the business world, what would you say has been your greatest influence? Or who?
Yeah, so, as I said, I didn't start out with business development in mind. So I did an English degree. So I've always taken a lot of inspiration from authors and the way that they use their words to make an impact on the world, both for the present and future generations as well. So one of my biggest aspirations is, is Maya Angelou, because I did my dissertation on her and her work. And she said a quote, and I hate to be that cheesy person who lives by quotes. This isn't going to be live, laugh, love at all. It's going to be do your best until you know better. And when you know better, you do better. And I think that is a fantastic sort of metaphor for how people go through their careers. And it's certainly something that I've taken on board. I certainly made a lot of mistakes early on in my career. And you've just got to do them. I think when you're learning and when you're at that stage in your career, you're going to make mistakes and you have to forgive yourself for those mistakes that you made, so long as you learn from them. And I'm continuing to make mistakes because I'm still relatively early on in my career as well. So I would say she's my biggest inspiration, because she has so many lessons that I brought into, it's transitioned from the page into reality. So yeah, I would say her.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely sentiment, and also I think that applies to not just the business environment but also life in general. You know, life is a series of lessons, and as long as you're learning and growing through them, then you're clearly moving in the right direction. Okay, so let's talk about your experiences as a woman in the workplace. Do you feel like at any point in your career that you've faced prejudices from the fact that you are a woman?
Yeah, definitely. I've got one specific example that always comes to mind when people ask me this question. I think it was twofold. I think it was both an age thing, because I was quite young at the time, and then a gender thing, very clearly a gender thing. You'll hear from my example now. So again, it was not, it wasn't with my time at Proctor Stevenson, it was in a previous business development role. And it was one of the first new business sort of meetings that I'd gone on. So I was very much supporting someone more senior in my organisation, but I was very keen to make a positive impression and get to know the business development role. So it was just a startup that we were talking to. We went out to meet them and we explained our process, very passionate and clinical about what we can do. And then he said, okay, you're the sales girls that they send out. Who are the men in the engine room that are actually going to do the work?
Oh dear.
Yeah, not great. As you can imagine, I was a bit shell-shocked by that statement. Thankfully, the person that I was with handled it very gracefully, kind of laughed it off, and kind of explained that, yes, we are the people that are here representing the agency. However, as you can see from the roles and the way that we've gone through our deck here, we're very much ingrained in the project as well. So while we are talking about it here, we're still the doers, if you like to say. And for a long time, I was really frustrated with the way that I handled that situation, because I wasn't more, I suppose, confrontational with my disagreement with how he had approached that discussion. But then looking back on it now, I think actually I did the best that I could in that situation. I was very young at the time, and today I would handle it very differently. Still professional, don't get me wrong, although temptation might say otherwise. But that responsibility is not on me, it's on him. And I think societal attitudes need to change in order for statements like that. He should carry the shame of that meeting with him. I should not carry anything with me. And that's where I'm at the moment. But, I've certainly faced difficulties in the workplace because of my gender and because of my age as well. One of those will be phased out because time seems to just keep moving. But I think that there needs to be a shift in attitudes, particularly as well with business development. I don't want to be seen as just the sales rep for the agency. It does a disservice to my role, and it does a disservice to many other women who are in a similar role as well. So yeah, I certainly face discrimination in that respect, but I have seen a lot of positive change, particularly with different generations, and the more awareness that we have is fantastic. But there are still kinks to be ironed out for sure.
I think that story you've told there is something that a lot of women watching will definitely resonate with. That's something that I can definitely relate to, where experiences, especially in the early stages of your career, something like that will happen and you'll almost be in a state of shock that you won't necessarily process what's happened at the time. You'll then go back, reflect on it and think, I wish I had handled that differently. But again, as you said, that's something that you live and you learn how to handle these situations. And hopefully there is this societal shift in that the onus is more on the men in these situations rather than how the women react to it. So hopefully that's something that's going to be phased out in future. But it sounds like you handled that situation with dignity and grace, regardless of whether you maybe would have liked to have been more assertive at the time. So kudos to you. So for other women that may be watching this, do you have any sort of strategies or recommendations for them about how they can assert themselves a bit more within their organisations?
I mean, it's incredibly difficult because it places a lot of the onus on the women themselves, when really, you as a woman, you're not at fault for the problems that society itself has created. Unfortunately, it's much easier to change yourself than it is to change the environment around you. So the main thing I would say is just to back yourself as much as possible, is to appreciate that you are bringing skills to the table and you deserve to be heard as much as possible. There will always be people who try to speak over you. That can be from any gender, unfortunately. But you have been hired for a reason. You're seeing success and you have a voice, so use it as much as possible. Sometimes what I try to do is sort of project a more confident version of myself. So even though I'm kind of a fake extrovert, so I can definitely project a more confident version, but internally I kind of wish I was just at home reading a book or something. And that's the tactic that I use in order to, make sure that my opinions are heard, that my voice is heard. And that's probably one of the things I would say to many other women, regardless of where you are at your career, is unfortunately these situations are going to occur. And many times the person doing it will be completely unaware of how their actions are affecting you. So what you do with that information is firstly not take it personally, because this is a problem that they need to solve. It's not your problem to solve at all. But at the same time, if it's appropriate, absolutely raise it with either the people around you so that action could be taken, or if you feel that you can, confront the person that has actually directly spoken to you like that. What I would do in the example that I gave previously now is just ask him to explain what his statement is, or what he's inferring there. Because I think the moment that you put someone like that on the spot and you ask them to explain their statements, that is when there will be massive holes in the statement that he's just given. So it's little things like that. I think you don't have to go and punch him or something. I wish that you could, but I think it's frowned upon by society, unfortunately. But it's just having that confidence in yourself that you're bringing something to the table and you do not have to justify that at all. What they need to justify is why they feel like it's appropriate to say things like that. So that would be my advice.
I think that's really strong advice, to think that, it's not necessarily anything to do with your fault. It's, a situation of how they're thinking about a situation, and potentially putting them in a position where they're forced to have that self-reflective moment and think, why am I thinking like this? Oh, it's because, I've been ingrained to think this for X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that I've asked everyone in this series. This is more about the leadership side. Obviously, we kind of co-manage the marketing and new business team. You have a direct report below you. So when you are approaching this leadership position, what traits do you think a great leader possesses?
I think the main thing really is communication. Nobody likes to feel as though they don't know where they stand with someone, and I think particularly if you're managing someone directly, communicating with them regularly will put someone at ease. It'll make sure that they're clear and they understand what their role is within the organisation and what their day-to-day tasks are. So communication is obviously the main thing. Transparency is a great thing as well. I think that kind of feeds into the point that I just raised. Everybody likes to know where they stand at any given point. And then also just being somebody that they can talk to. So you want to keep a little bit of distance, only because you need to retain that level of professionalism. So the manager-executive relationship. However, they need to be able to come to you for advice and talk through things, and you want to be approachable enough that they feel that they are confident in their ability to do so. So, I guess those are the main things really that I've picked up, but I think it's a huge learning curve for me as well. I'm still relatively early on in my career, so there are certainly things that I need to learn from the people above me, which I'm really excited to do as well. So, if anyone has advice for me to take on, I would really appreciate it as well. I think that managing other people is probably one of the biggest learning curves that somebody can take on within their career. And there are certainly mistakes that I will make along the way, but I think that's where my Maya Angelou quote comes in. And it's that kind of mindset, I think, that will help make sure that that relationship just continues to go from strength to strength as it continues. So yeah, that's my main thing.
Lovely. Okay, I've got one last question for you. Yeah. Upon reflection of your career up to this point, if you could give advice to a younger version of yourself, what would that be?
Aside from don't dye your hair grey, I've seen some dodgy hairstyles over the years. Please don't look at my Facebook. It would probably just be to not doubt myself so much. I certainly, particularly early on, I think every person goes through this, a stage of, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. Am I right for this role? Is the approach that I'm taking correct? All of these things. And it can certainly hinder you in your career development because you're scared to do anything. You're scared to kind of give it a shot. So what my main thing would be is to just back yourself. It's the same thing that I would say to anybody else who's coming to me for advice. Just back yourself and trust that your instincts are correct. Like I said, there's a reason that a person progresses throughout their career, and it's because they're taking chances, they're taking risks. The worst thing that someone can say is no. And that's really not the end of the world, to be honest. Business development, you face rejection on a daily basis, so you have to have a bit of thick skin. So I would just say, stop doubting yourself. You're doing fine. just keep trying, keep plugging away, and you'll get to the goal eventually. And thankfully I'm in an agency now that really supports everything that I do and welcomes opinions and welcomes fresh ideas, and brings that to my role as well. So yeah, that would be the main thing, I think.
Okay, great. Well, Sophie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And if you want to find out a little bit more about our services in general, whether that's creative strategy or technology, get in touch with us at marketing@proctors.co.uk. Or you can keep up to date with our latest movements on our social channels, which you'll see on the next frame. Thanks for watching.